have a special guest returning today. This is Cody. He was with us for, we think, maybe an Acolyte review, but he was definitely with us for a Darth Bane novel trilogy review. That was an awesome episode. So go check it out if you're a fan of the Star Wars novels. Cody knows his shit with Star Wars, so happy to have him back. Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to go ahead and talk about some future Star Wars projects we would like to see, however far fetched they might be, or maybe even realistic they might be. But who knows, since Star Wars is in fact in shambles. I mean, I don't even want to get into how disappointing this franchise has been, especially when it's like one of the most nostalgic franchises. The opening score and the scroll to those movies is one of the coolest experiences in a theater, and to see this franchise dying the way it is, it's heartbreaking, and we just really want to see it come back. So we're doing a little hopeful episode here. Anyway, don't forget to follow us at Why So Sidious Pod on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X. You could find a variety of content there that you're not going to hear on the podcasts. And our recent episodes have included things like the Penguin reviews, episode by episode. Our Weekend Geeks are coming out. The last one we did covered some Daredevil news, some Lanterns news coming out of the DCU, Andy Serkis as Noel, stuff like that. We got Rings of Power. We covered all those episodes. We got some comic reviews most recently. We covered a couple Penguin comics. So check all that stuff out. And thank you for joining us. So let's get into it. Here we are with Star Wars. This is definitely more of a laid-back, fun episode, getting creative, what we might want to see in the future here. Basically, Star Wars recently just announced that they lost a writer for the upcoming Rey movie, which I find ridiculous that they're making a Rey movie in the first place. Why would they continue the story with the characters from the trilogy that was probably the most divided, controversial trilogy in Star Wars? You might compare it to the prequels, but at least a decade went by, and then everyone was like, actually, that was kind of good. Like, actually, we kind of like that. Like, after time went by, everyone, I think, maybe it likes the prequels. But with this Rey and Kylo trilogy, I mean, that really divided the fan base, so I think it's the stupidest thing to make another movie going back to that. Otherwise, there is, I think the Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming out, that shows some promise. The Mandoverse is one of the things that has been pretty solid lately. There's been some hit or miss stuff. It's not the best, but I'm excited to see where that goes. There's Ahsoka Season 2 coming out. There's Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and then there's the big climax movie that's going to culminate everything. I bet you it's going to be titled Heir to the Empire. Thrawn's going to be the main villain there. Other than that, there's also the James Mangold movie, which I'm really excited about. It's maybe going to be titled Dawn of the Jedi. It's about the origin of the Force, and I think that sounds absolutely amazing, especially someone like James Mangold directing, who did Logan. I think he did Ford v Ferrari. He's going to do Swamp Thing in the DCU. He's a solid director, and that project shows promise. Other than that, there's like a Taika Waititi movie I don't care at all about. I don't want to see that kind of goofiness in Star Wars. There's a Sean Levy movie who directed Deadpool and Wolverine. I have no clue what that's going to be about. Therefore, I don't really care. A Lando series, don't care. Rey movie. And I mean, we already had canceled projects from the creators of Game of Thrones, Benioff and Wise. I mean, they're just all over the place, man. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But let's just have some fun with this. We're going to do top 5 projects that we want to see in the future. They might be realistic. They might be far-fetched. But let's have some fun with it. Cody, how are you feeling about Star Wars lately, first of all?
Coming off Acolyte, not great. I will say I think I enjoyed Acolyte more than most. Mostly because, yeah, I mean, the thing that got me into Star Wars in general was a lot of the saber choreography. I love seeing the big dramatic epic fight scenes, and I think the whole scene with Kamir was just top notch. I loved it. The use of the cortosis mask and the gauntlets and him, the lightsabers breaking apart. It was great to me. And so, acting not fantastic, writing, storyline not great, but they did the action really, really well. A little bit of the crouching tiger kind of stuff. So I enjoyed it. It was okay, but overall, I mean, they've just been in a nosedive, and it seems like the I don't know if it's Kathleen Kennedy or whoever's heading Star Wars is they're just out of touch with what everybody wants to see. It's a shame because the things that really brought everybody together Star Wars wise was these epic stories of the come from behinds and the friendship and the perseverance and all this stuff, and it seems like they don't have that anymore. The writing is not good. They're going into these random directions that nobody really wants, and they're taking these stories out that they don't fit, or they're forcing things in where they shouldn't be. So yeah, I mean, I'm always going to stay hopeful. I love Star Wars, if you couldn't tell. Um, I'm a big fan. So I I'm more of a I'll believe it when I see it. There's been so many canceled projects, so many, you know, it seems like they get our hopes up and then they instead deliver us some nonsense that we don't want. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But yeah,
Yep.
I'm hoping for some good stuff in the future.
Yeah, always. I will always hope for good Star Wars in the future. I couldn't agree more. Everything you said, they're just all over the place, man. There's no cohesive situation at all. Even going back to their last trilogy, they didn't even have a blueprint for three movies. They had a director come on. They switched a director for the next movie. They went back to the old director for the next movie. Just that's ridiculous. I mean, I think it's crazy that Kathleen Kennedy still has a job. Apparently, she's a really good producer of movies, by the movie. But overseeing a franchise like this has just been nothing but losses. Sure, there's been some
Well, and her
wins.
name's been on
Andor.
some really, yeah, her name's been on some great projects like way in the past, starting with the original trilogy. I mean, she's been around a long time, and I think as a producer, she's done fine with what she's, in that avenue. But I think she just doesn't have a clear vision. They just don't have a plan. And I think they need a plan. And that's really what I want to see going forward.
Same here. And at least with Filoni and Favreau, at least the Mandoverse has a little plan, but that's just their own little corner. And it's a corner that it's the same corner we've visited. It's another corner in the same story we've been visiting. So there's been no Old Republic movies. There's been no Sith oriented movies. And really, I think that's what Star Wars fans want most. They probably want a Sith oriented movie. You got the Acolyte, but it just didn't work out. The writing was ridiculous. The characters were ridiculous. The decisions they made were ridiculous. There was one amazing episode, and I'm not going to lie. That one episode, I think it was 4 or 3, when all these Jedi just get killed. I mean, that was one of the coolest episodes of Star Wars I've seen in a shitty series, though, so it didn't really matter.
No, it's one thing that Star Wars never really does well is the shock factor. And that episode, I was like, "Whoa, what in the world is like
All right.
just Jedi just getting slaughtered?" I'm like, "Wow, this is crazy."
Right. Well, and even in Mandalorian and Ahsoka, not a ton of emotion and not a ton of like attachment. Like it was a cool story, especially in Mando, but even like Ahsoka, it was really fun, like aesthetically pleasing, lightsaber fights, and the story was kind of cool. Got some good Sith going on, but really, it wasn't like a story I feel so attached to, like the original 6 movies. Like those are amazing stories, and there's shock factor. Alderaan being destroyed, like a whole planet, and you're like, that I've never seen a whole planet be destroyed in a movie. That's crazy. And this princess just watched her home die. Stuff like that. There's just a lot. There's a lot they need to do. But let's get into our projects. We both got 5 projects. We both might have an OLI or 2, but I'll throw it to you first. Give me a project you want to see in the future.
So this is a maybe a little bit of fan service, but really it's more of this is really what they, if they want to stay in the Skywalker saga, which they're going to need to a little bit, just because there's so many holes and gaps. I think one thing that they can do to really bring people back in is a live action series with Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader, just tearing people up. A bridge in between 3 and 4, where not this Obi-Wan series with these random story bits that just don't make sense. I want Vader on his own, maybe even running some stuff with Thrawn, just out there on missions, just a maybe an 8-part live action miniseries, just going through, and I just want to see a prime Vader, the end of oh goodness, the end of Rogue One Vader. I want to see that Vader just going through and just tearing people up. And I think that's one way that they can get people back on their side. That's one character that everybody loves that, as far as the screen adaptations, we haven't got a ton of him in that capacity. So that's what I think that they could do to really just jumpstart the whole revival of Star Wars again.
Yeah, I think it's such a no-brainer. I didn't even put it on my list, but I would obviously, that's probably the single best thing you could possibly do in the Skywalker era anyway. I'd say like outside and the Old Republic is like probably the most exciting thing they could do. But Darth Vader, dude, like follow. There's a comic by Charles Soule. Starts with the very end of Revenge of the Sith. He was just born as Vader, and he has to go on a journey to find his lightsaber. He runs into a
Yep.
Jedi. Have you read that comic?
I've read the first chunk of it. Yeah.
And you saw him fight
Uh,
that guy and get destroyed, and then come back and kill him
yeah.
and his whole town, like that.
Yeah, that his whole quest to find his crystal. Yeah, I love it. I mean,
It's
it's a great story. It's a great kickstart for Vader, and I'm all about it.
yeah, for sure. I would 100% be sold on that. That's, I mean, Vader's like one of my favorite characters in fiction, so that'd be awesome. And you could say it might reek of desperation, almost like Dave said. It's almost like bringing RDJ back to be the main villain of the Marvel universe. But I say I'm all fucking in for a Darth Vader. Like I don't care. I just want Darth Vader in there, especially just like you said, not just some weird side story with Obi-Wan, but do a journey for Vader to build his character, like how he got to the legendary status that he was in for Episode 4, A New Hope. That's a no-brainer. Like, and you don't even need Hayden Christensen back necessarily. You have that option. That's great. But you could have him in the suit the whole time. I'm pretty sure the voice actor. I can't believe I'm not thinking of his name right
James Earl
now.
Jones.
Thank you, dumb.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
pretty
got
sure
you.
he signed over the rights to his AI voice. I could use that for the rest
He
of
did.
time. So please, I mean, it's so easy, so easy. Everybody would do it. If you did, even if you did a movie, that's $1 billion movie. It's Darth Vader. Come on, I'm there
Yeah,
for it.
and yeah, it is a little cheesy. It's a little maybe a little desperate, but I mean, if you're gonna go out and throw out these series that have no connection to the story, that oh look, it's actually part of the timeline because that was Plagueis in a cave. Like, no, 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 no.
Right.
Like, do something that is going to get the people back on your side. Do something that's going to draw attention back in. Because as of now, I mean, who knows what the pull is, and who's going to watch Skeleton Crew? Like,
Right.
it seems great to me. I'm on board, but I am that's me, like
Yeah.
of course I'm going to watch whatever they put out, but there's a lot of people that they're not, because of how bad that they've messed it up with so many of these projects. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little yeah, it's a cheat code in my opinion, but if
But it's almost
you
like,
want
dude,
the hype back.
you're against the ropes. Might as well start throwing haymakers. Like you're down in the fourth quarter with a minute left. You might as well throw a Hail Mary. It reeks of desperation. It's because they're desperate. Like they're losing their fans. No one's
Yeah, no,
trusts Star
it's
Wars anymore.
yeah, Star Wars is the New York Jets right now. They just need Rodgers to throw a bomb.
Right. Okay, and I'll go with another obvious one. So here's my first pick, and we've talked about it on the pod before, but like, just do a Darth Bane trilogy. Just do it. Like it's a no-brainer for me. I feel like one thing I think they're getting wrong is they're trying to appeal to all ages. And yes, you have to have kids have access to the movies. So don't go rated R. I'm not saying that at all. But look at Andor and Rogue One. Those were the most like mature adult oriented shows or movies out there, and they were widely recognized as some of the best projects of the past decade from Star Wars. Obviously, the adult fan base is your primary fan base, aside from toy sales. You know, the main fans from Star Wars are 40, 50 years old right now. And even if you were a fan from the prequels, they're all in their 20s. So, yeah, you got some kids that watch Star Wars, but your people who are going to be buying tickets, taking their kids to go see Star Wars, they're adults. Do something adult. Darth Bane is going to be a mature adult oriented story. And it's a Sith thing. We haven't gotten a Sith story yet. We need a Sith story, bro. And it would be really perfect to follow up James Mangold's movie about the origin of the Force with a movie or trilogy about the origin of the Sith. It just seems way too perfect, and it's everything the Star Wars fans want. There's action, there's crazy story, there's going to be some lightsabers. It's literally everything we want. So I think it's a no-brainer. You have a blueprint, you have a screenplay damn near from these books, and I think that's $1 billion per movie trilogy. Just freaking do it.
Oh, I am so on board. That's actually number one on my list. But, our last podcast, we went with Bane. So I was like, all right, I don't want to start with Bane. But no, I'm so on board, man. I would love it so much. And you could definitely make it not rated R. I think
Yeah.
it's a story that, there's some crazy stuff that goes on in that story, but I think you can do it in a way. I see it in the kind of the Rogue One
Yeah.
style, to where, yeah, I mean, it starts off very similar, him like hiding on a rope planet in a cave kind of thing, just like Jyn Erso. And it's like this whole like, it's a story of him rising through the ranks, which, we've seen a dozen times, but
But everyone loves
it's
that
a,
story. It's an awesome
it
story to
really
tell.
is. But he rises to wipe out the entire Sith, which is so, it's such a different spin on that story that I think it would be. Yeah, it's definitely number one on my list. I would love it so much. So yeah, I'm fully on board with that.
For sure. All right. Give me another idea. Two out of the top five. In no particular order, of course.
So I've got I'll stay in the what I think they should do category, and I want to go probably let's go in between 6 and 7. Stay in the Skywalker saga, and I want a Luke and Mara Jade building the Jedi Order, getting to that point where before Kylo turns, those couple
Oh,
flashbacks
yeah.
we get, where it's Luke standing over Kylo, it's Kylo, fighting Luke. It's them, that feud between them. I want to see what leads to that, and I think that would help with their continuity, really getting those holes in character development from Luke that we didn't get to see on screen, where we went from, Luke at the end of episode 6 is the savior. He is everything that we need. He basically saves the entire universe. And then it goes right from that to the end of episode 7, start of 8, where he is a recluse hermit. I hate you, leave me alone, I'm not helping you. How does that happen? That's what
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of fans had a tough time with when they're watching the sequels. I think a lot can agree that Seven, Force Awakens was not a bad movie. I mean, yes, it was pretty much a copy paste of A New Hope, but I think it was well done. It's not on the bottom list for me. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I
Me
love the Rey
too.
character. I think they do some good things with character development. I think introducing a couple new characters was good. But what they didn't do well was obviously by switching directors and switching the script on episode 8, The Last Jedi. It was very it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I want to see a movie or series in between those 6 and 7, to where you see what happens with Luke, and I want them to introduce Mara Jade, and I want that whole storyline to continue into the point where Luke basically crumbles. and I want to see that downfall to where he gets to that point where he's on that remote island planet and he's out on his own and he's oh, how did he get there? That's I think if they did a little bit of explaining, I think that could help a bit with the continuity of the sequels and kind of bring some people back and make it make a little more sense.
Yeah, you almost want them to fix the sequels, but then you almost want them to forget it and like cut it out of canon completely. But I think there's a lot to be said with fixing them. Like a lot of really cool stories can take place in between 6 and 7 for sure. That'd be an awesome story. Obviously, it'd be tough with Mark Hamill being his age and his weight compared to how Luke looks in the end of Return of the Jedi. You need some. You'd have to lose some weight and then a little CGI to make him younger. And dude, I'm all about it because you could still
Yeah, and I'm
have
okay.
Kylo. What's his
Yeah,
name?
I'm okay with how they did uh, the CGI with him for was it Mando the finale of season two
Looked
where
great.
they brought
Yeah,
him in. I thought it looked okay. Yeah, I had
yeah.
no problem with it. So if they want to go that route and keep the young Luke, like that's the Luke that I think we need to see because that's the last point. Or maybe I guess in either Ahsoka or Boba Fett series where we see him building the temple basically. That's the last point we see him until we see him at the very end of episode 7. And in that giant span of years, something crazy happened. But if we went even closer to 6 and started working our way towards 7 and really filling in those holes, because I mean, they've done it with a bunch of series. We see Rebels. Rebels is a big filler from 3 to 4. We see it with Andor, filling those gaps. And so if we're going to be filling gaps like that, we need to fill this giant chunk of time. They took a huge jump from 6 to 7 and they didn't tell us
Anything,
anything.
right? Where things
Yeah.
really, really changed. There is a book called Shadows of the Sith. Have you read that?
I haven't read that one.
Yeah, I've read, I think, the first quarter, and it honestly does a pretty good job at explaining some things, even in Rise of the Skywalker. Like the slow return of Palpatine and that dagger that they used and why it ended up on that planet. There's some stuff. I'm not going to say it's a great book. I'm not going to say it makes the trilogy better. But it is interesting. I will say that. Yeah, so that'd be awesome for sure. Well, my next pick is going to go way out there. Has nothing to do with anything. This is my own little creation, not Old Republic, not new, nothing. I want to go. I would love to see a Star Wars movie, far future, post-apocalyptic movie.
Ooh.
Have a Fellowship of the Rings esque prologue and showing how whoever replaced the First Order, or whoever, maybe it was the First Order, whatever the hell's going on with that trilogy, show how they just completely destroyed not only the galaxy but damn near like the universe. Like whatever they did was so stupid. If you evolved from a Death Star killing one planet to the First Order killing multiple planets, what's the next empire going to do? They're going to do something bigger and badder, and then they're going to be retarded. And I can't say that, but they're going to mess up the whole universe, right? So I want to see post-apocalyptic. You got these little civilizations barely surviving, but I want to follow a town. They're in conflict with like a militia who wants to become the next government. They're taking advantage of people, hurting them, just gangsters. And in this helpless town, there is a force-sensitive dude who saves people, who is very mysterious, behind the shadows. He doesn't have a lightsaber because Jedi are gone. I would love a character that does study the past of the Jedi and bring back the myth of the Jedi. Like no one believes they exist, but there is a force sensitive dude. And eventually he helps this town take over and stop that militia and have some local people, some good characters we can get on board with, have them kind of team up with him and like him or whatever. But eventually they take out the militias and kind of start creating their own government that's good and that helps people. And I picture like a side story where this bad militia has like one of the very few ships capable of space travel. And, that's one of their missions. They shut them down and they steal their space travel ship. I see a lot of really cool action with the force sensitive dude without a lightsaber that just destroys people with the force. And by the end of it, they have maybe the beginning of a government established, and like by the end of the movie he sets people off on a mission like now that we have this space travel ship, go find a civilization, go find some life in the galaxy, see if there's anything out there, see if there's any fertile land that we can inhabit. And that could lead to a nice spin-off series after the movie, a very action adventure quest oriented series where it's just like the tension is there, nothing, there's no hope in the galaxy, but we finally have a little hope to go find some life in the galaxy. And then like, you're just going to hope to find something. I like the idea of a series about adventure, going and traveling from planet to planet, finding the possibility of life or fertile land. And that's one of my ideas right there. Do a movie like that.
Dude, that sounds so cool. I what I pictured as soon as you brought it up, what I pictured was the oh goodness, the Star Wars show that was done by all the different directors. I can't believe I'm blanking right now.
Visions.
Visions, yeah, Visions, the Ronin episode, where the kind of wanderer comes into the town. Just this random force sensitive dude helps them, fight for themselves and fight off the militia, that kind of thing. But I like this whole post apocalyptic kind of style. That would be really, really cool. I'm super on board with that. And it's something to get away from everything that we've done
Completely.
already, which I
Yes.
love. I love that idea. Absolutely.
Hell yeah. Because I think one of the keys, like if I was Kathleen Kennedy or more what we would just fire her, whoever the new person is you want to stray away from everything we know, but you also want to keep the legacy of what we do know alive. So when I give my top five, that's the only really out there thing. Like the rest of the things is to kind of continue with some legacy. But I think you got to do both. You can't just completely 100% ditch the Skywalker stuff or that era in general, but you do need to get the hell out of there for some really good projects. And you can come back for some stuff, but there's got to be that variety for sure, I think.
Nope. I love that.
Oh, yeah. All right, give us your third idea.
All right. So third idea. Okay. So I have this as like a Star Wars animated series, kind of oddball stories. So what I want is almost like a couple seasons, a Jedi season and a Sith season, where they do almost like a biography on certain characters. Maybe characters that we saw a little bit in the live action that we didn't get a whole lot of information on. So some of the characters that I had in here, 6 to 8 episodes. I definitely want to see Jedi first. We'd do like Plo Koon, Quinlan Voss, Kit Fisto, Luminara, Kiadi-Mundi, and maybe even Jocasta Nu. Some of these smaller characters that we, didn't really get a whole lot of information on. I know they were more prevalent in like Clone Wars stuff, but really not a whole lot of Quinlan Voss. He's one that I really want to see in that. So that would be like the first series, and then the second season would be the Sith side. So Maul, Bane and Xana, Dooku, Grievous, Revan, Nihilus, Exar Kun, Plagueis, Tenebris, like these whole like what starting from early, like a quick speed through their life, almost like a quick summary of a biography of them. So where they're from, what planet they're from, what their kind of upbringing was, and how they got involved with either the Jedi or the Sith, and who trained them, and how they really became into the person that we know, into whatever movie, series, book, comic, however we really see them. I think that would be probably one that I would find really interesting, just to see some of the background on these characters, and really develop some of these characters that we haven't seen a whole lot of.
Dude, that seems like a curveball, but at the same time a no-brainer. That seems awesome. Like these side characters that we like but we don't know anything about, just do like a series like you mean like an episode each where we dive into their background and maybe their origins, and they each kind of have their own episode.
Yeah, so each episode would be very specific to, like, if you did a Xana episode, right? You talk about
Yeah.
Bane and Xana's upbringing, how Bane found her, trained her, and how she got to, the point where she became the next in line for the Sith, and brought in Cognis as her as her apprentice, her Sith apprentice, or
I love that.
I want to know more about General Grievous, even characters that we've seen quite a bit of, but still, like, this character is very like unknown to a lot of people. Like, where did he come from? He's actually a human cyborg. He's not like just a robot, and like, how did he get to the point where he was dependent on these mechanics to be able to live, and how did he turn to like this, like, you know dark side general that we see in episode 2 and 3.
Oh, dude, I absolutely love that. It's like Tales of the Jedi, kind of more specific to
Pretty much,
characters.
yeah. But I want to see it, yeah, very specific to each character getting their own episode, and really elaborating on them, and giving them a little bit of the limelight. So yeah, that's something I think would be fun.
That's a great idea. And let me ask you this: would you prefer it to be animated or live action?
Probably animated. I think animated would be a little bit easier.
It'd be easier for
Just
sure.
to go through, and each one of is gonna have so many different, planets, backgrounds, environments, going from so many different ages of the character up and through, as a childhood upbringing. I think animated would probably be the way to go. Be a little bit easier to kind of, I don't know, make it happen.
It'd be way easier. I would prefer live action because I honestly animated doesn't speak to me, dude. Like no matter how good it is,
No,
it's just a little bit off for me. And it's crazy. I like comics. I mean, that's I feel it feels like more animated than animated is. But on the other side, it's almost like you still get to picture a lot of it in your head in a certain way, and you get the pictures as reference. But yeah, animated, dude. I mean, I love Clone Wars, and I do like the good animated stuff. Tales of the Jedi was solid. Clone Wars is freaking awesome. I really like Clone Wars. And what you're saying, it would work way better as animated. But yeah, I love live action. That's a great idea, though. Hell yeah, that's actually
yeah.
a
When I
really good
when I
idea.
pictured it, I really thought of it as Clone Wars, to where you had like the Kit Fisto, the the Jedi that we know and love from the Clone Wars. That, yeah, having the whole announcer and everything, kind of
Yeah,
like, as a background, that almost like a narrator showing, his life progression. So yeah, that's kind of how I saw it. But I think live action would be great too. I would never,
dude.
I'll never turn down some live action Star Wars.
Somehow that narrator at the beginning of each Clone Wars episode, he came out of nowhere, but somehow that captured like the magic of the scrolls to an extent, not fully, but somehow I absolutely loved that narration and going into like it felt Star Wars somehow, even though it was so new, it was so different and new and fresh. But I loved that narration.
100%. Yeah. I thought every time you hear the voice, you're like, oh, another episode. Let's go. Like, it
Well, and
really,
like,
like, it has Clone Wars, like the Star Wars animated series. Like, that's what it, yeah. I'm with you.
and sometimes he like really threw out some nuance and some like comedy in there too, and it was always just entertaining. Well, we have similar ideas going on because I had another going back to stuff we're familiar with. My next idea was a Yoda origin movie. Now, if you had your series in a perfect world and that was going on, I would not want Yoda to have a single episode. I would want Yoda to have a whole movie because he is a legendary character that's so tied to the Star Wars legacy. Yet we know nothing about Yoda, and he's an easy CGI character to do with. You could have any voice do the Yoda voice, and it's just CGI. So that's easy. You could do that 100 years from now, and a Yoda movie would still work out. So I would. That's my third idea: Yoda origin movie, and I would love for it to do a lot of Old Republic stuff as well. Establish the Old Republic, because if I'm not mistaken, he was in his prime, or maybe a little younger than that during the Old Republic. I think I'm pretty sure he was, and I would just love to see his arc, his origin story, and how he got landed right onto the Jedi Council, and his rise to the Jedi Council being like the beginning of a positive change against the Sith. And I would also love a lot of lore connecting, because like if all the movies that I had happened, I would want to connect. You would see lore from James Mangold's Origin of the Force movie. You would see that lore in the Darth Bane trilogy. And then you get to this Yoda movie in the Old Republic, and you would see a lot of lore from the Darth Bane movie bleed into the Yoda movie. So I love Yoda. I want to see way more of him. As cool as he is, we haven't seen anything on Yoda aside from what we have seen in the original couple trilogies, which is very small compared to his shadow that's forecasted over the Star Wars universe. So yeah, I would want it all to feel connected, unlike what we see now. Nothing feels connected. It's crazy, really crazy considering it's all under Disney still, under Bob Iger. That just shows you how much of a baller Kevin Feige is. You know, it's not like a Disney thing. How everything connects and feels so connected. That was a Kevin Feige thing that he did so well. But even in the post-apocalyptic movie, I would love to see that lore from the origins of the Sith, or Darth Bane, everything bleeding into that, like metaphorical fossils being unearthed, in this post-apocalyptic world. But yeah, just give me a Yoda origin movie, man. I think that's a good way to go.
Oh yeah, I'm on board with that for sure. I would love that. And what's crazy is I think a lot is going to end up riding on this James Mangold movie. I mean, if as we go through and we start talking about the origins of the Force, and what does he say, 25,000 years in the past or whatever. If we're going to go that far and do an origin of the Force story, I think this is going to be a pivotal story in the whole Star Wars universe, because this is something that, like, if you mess this up, it could
Right.
really, really do some damage. I mean, because there's a lot of things with the Force that they've barely touched on. You start looking about like was it season three and season four of Rebels with the Bendu, just these giant force beings. If you look into the Bane trilogy, they had these kind of, they described as like floating ball animal things that were, they could speak through to you through the force, and they could use the force in small capacities. So if you start if you mess up the origin of the force, then it's going to affect everything else that came after it. So I'm really, really a bit skeptical, but I think if they do that right, then stuff going forward will really tie in. So I'm hoping this works because, I mean, dude, something like a Yoda origin story. I mean, he was alive 100 years after Bane. Bane was 1,000 years before the prequels. So, we're talking Yoda's about almost 1,000 years old in the original trilogy. In his 900s, in the prequels. So, Yoda has been alive for so long and seen so much that I think this would be a really good move if especially if we're talking origin stories. I'm bought in for sure.
For sure. And it could appeal to all crowds. A lot of the kids would be excited about it. You don't have to go full on Darth Bane dark, even if you are in the older public. I mean, you can get pretty like mild PG-13 and still be in the older public because you're not going full Sith movie like they are the villains. But yeah, yeah, I think Yoda's a good one, especially just because the CGI thing. I mean, there's a lot of characters like that. Boba Fett, like you said, Darth Grievous. There's a lot of characters you could do anytime. 200 years from now, and you could still do Darth Grievous. You could still do Yoda. You could still do Boba Fett. But, I mean, my God, they butchered that Boba Fett series. But my point is, you don't have an actor attached to the image of this character. You have a CGI character, so you could really do anything you want. And since Yoda specifically is so old, there is a lot of story to be told in his background and history.
Yeah, like 1,000 years worth.
Yeah. All right. We got two projects left. Throw one out there.
All right. Well, I had Bane Trilogy, which we already talked about, and so my last one, I want a Palpatine and Plagueis series. Definitely live action, but I want it to be very Andor, because when you talk about Andor as how well written and how well schemed and plotted everything was with the rebellion, that is nowhere compared to what Palpatine and Plagueis were able to ultimately, devise to be able to take over the entire galaxy. And so if you can write that same script type, that same grittiness, down to earth, underground, behind the scenes movement with Palpatine and Plagueis and how they kind of, you know, I guess, devise their entire plan to rise to the top of the Senate all the way to chancellorship, at the same time developing, the side character of Maul and where he came from. Maybe this is just me because I love Darth Maul so much, but how Palpatine came into the possession of Darth Maul and how he raised and trained him to become an assassin, to work behind the scenes, to carry out his little plots and things. I think that would be may I wouldn't even consider this a money grab like the Vader thing, because I think that this is one of the greatest novels that we've ever seen as far as Star Wars goes. The
Yeah.
Plagueis novel is just incredible. It's so good from start to finish. And I think I recently, probably about 2 months ago, went back and reread it again for the third time, and I'm convinced that there is no better written Star Wars than this Plagueis novel. So I think this is something that they need to do. I think they really need to get into and show Palpatine and how he rose all the way up. Love you. My daughter came in to say hi. So yeah, that would be. I think that's probably the. I mean, I could name off 100, but that's the last big one I had. Was I want to see Plagueis and Palpatine from a young age, how he works him into the Senate and how he rises to the top, how they devise that whole plan.
Yeah, I'm glad you chose that because I like Darth Vader and the Darth Plagueis novel were the two like so obvious ones for me that I couldn't do it. To be honest, the Darth Bane trilogy was so obvious, but I still had to do it because we haven't had a Sith show yet, a Sith movie yet. So I'm glad you brought it up because that's just amazing. It's such a good book and it's a perfect prequel to the prequels. It shows so many things. It shows how so many things took place in the prequels at such a satisfying level, including the clones on Camino, if I'm not mistaken, right? Didn't it show them start to do that? They showed Plagueis starting to want to build an army of clones on Camino.
Yeah,
They showed
absolutely.
that, and they have even Darth Maul as a baby being taken under the wing of Palpatine and start to be an assassin for the Sith. That's freaking awesome. And then just how they started to sink their teeth into the Trade Federation or the Republic. Everything that happened in the prequels was because of what happened in this Plagueis novel. And that's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And to see it not only, it would be a modern, like the prequels at the time were pretty childish. But if you went back and did a prequel to the prequels, I feel like they wouldn't be childish that way. None of the Jar Jar vibes at all, none of that stuff going on. So, like you said, Andor vibes with Plagueis and Palpatine and Sith and the Sith lore and the idea of coming back to life or cheating death more so, which would honestly, that would help with Palpatine's return in Rise of the Skywalker, showing Palpatine's master's obsession with cheating death, and it would help Rise of Skywalker out just a little bit. Not enough to make it a good movie, but it'd be like, okay, okay. It's not like it was just random he came back to life. Like this was something he thought of ever since he became a Sith.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely I it could help. It could help the sequels for sure. I don't know how much you could really help them, but I think
Yeah.
they're here. We have them. You might as well start putting things in to make it make more sense, because you can't erase them. So I'm a that. Maybe it's just the fan in me, but I think that's kind of the no-brainer as far as, the next logical step. I don't want a trilogy. I think a trilogy is overplayed, and I think it would really kind of rub some people the wrong way, especially starting before episode one. It wouldn't fit as well. A single movie, or I don't even know if you have enough time in a movie to do it. I think a series is probably your best bet. 1 or 2 seasons, or a one good 10 episode series,
Yeah.
really showing how it happened. So yeah, that would be my. my big one there.
Hell yeah. All right, I'll bust out my last two. Not a lot of thought into them, but one of them is a Thrawn origin movie. You have a blueprint with that. Disney, well, technically it's a canon book, but the Thrawn origin show how he came under the wing of the Emperor and all that stuff. But yeah, we're getting the big climactic Thrawn movie with the Mandoverse. So in Star Wars fashion, just go back after that movie's already done with. Go back before that. How did Thrawn even get taken into the Empire, and why is he where? We got a little in Rebels, but not the origin stuff. Like, show us what's going on there. And since they're having big problems legally with Thrawn or Tarkin,
Tarkin, yeah.
right, who was in the book, you could even replace him with Orson Krennic. I'm sure Ben Mendelsohn would like to come back. But that would be a lot of fun. Thrawn is such an interesting character, a very Sherlock Holmes, a very like Knives Out. Craig, who's it? Craig, whoever plays James Bond.
The James
that
Bond guy. Yeah.
Craig
Yeah.
something. He's very much like that, and it would be really fun to see him come into the Emperor, see his origin, and maybe like show the whole him deducing what the Empire is doing as far as creating the Death Star. Have Darth Vader in the background. We don't have to see Darth Vader, but his legend is in the background. His shadow is darkening the Empire. It's darkening the present day at the time, and maybe, like Book Two, even have him deduce Darth Vader's identity. Like, it'd be really fun to see Thrawn and the Emperor while he's like sinking his teeth into what the Empire really is. Figure out the Death Star, figure out Darth Vader, figure out the inner workings of the Empire during this movie. But I think an origin Thrawn movie would be sick. And then I'm going to go with the Darth Maul movie, because after seeing The Penguin and they pulled off this comic book series with some side character like in this criminal empire, just do a Darth Maul movie with all that criminal stuff you had going on with the Black Syndicates, I think they're called, and the Hutts and the Pikes, and you could have Jabba in there, but show this dude doing what the Penguin is doing, overtaking a criminal empire. We need more live action Darth Maul. We have not gotten enough of Darth Maul. I'm pretty sure the actor is down to do more of that stuff. You could even have some overlap with the Clone Wars, and that's fine. But this dude needs to be seen on live action. I think everyone loves Darth Maul. That's another kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, give me some Thrawn origin and give me some Darth Maul overtaking a criminal empire, and let's go.
Dude, I'm so down with both. I think Thrawn Origin is a big one that would really, really make a lot of things make sense, and it'd be a big grab because it's a completely different style. I mean, this guy literally was probably the only person to find out until Luke who Vader was. I mean, he was that smart and that resourceful. So Thrawn, I think, he's such an interesting character, and I love that Timothy Zahn, that 2017 through 2020 series. I think they kind of fell off a little bit as they got going. The third book, I think, had a good climactic ending, but that is a good blueprint for them to make that movie. And then obviously a Maul movie is just, or movie series, whatever you want to do. You're gonna put him in there, and I think Ray Park might be getting a little old to be doing the acrobatics, but Sam Witwer has the voice down pat, and I love him so much. This guy needs to be on screen. He needs to be in Star Wars. I am a huge Sam Witwer fan, so he's a big one for me. So yeah, I would love to see him take on that role as Maul. And really, I mean, those early days, if you started there with him training, he lived on a remote planet for a long time, training against these like specialty robots that were designed in lightsaber combat. And so you can start with him there, like learning how to use the lightsaber, and it would be a way to bring Sam Witwer into like the acrobatics and teach him how to use and properly wield a lightsaber, to also build it into Maul learning how to do it. So I think that would be one way to really put him into there, and make it kind of make a little more sense as far as the physicality of it. So yeah, I'm down for both of those, dude. They sound great.
Man, what bothers me is that this freaking super rich lady who is just in control of everything, putting out these ridiculous ideas for Star Wars movies and series, and you got a couple fans here that are having zero power. We're not in the industry, and I feel like both of our ideas would bring Star Wars back. And what are you doing, Kathleen? Or what are you doing, Bob Iger? Fire Kathleen, please. Like, no offense to her. She's doing great producing single movies at a time. Let her do that and be successful with that. But my God, she has taken the legacy of Star Wars and just peed all over it. Just peed all over it. And now we have a Star Wars legacy that's got urine all over it. And that's just what we have now. And we have to live with it.
Yeah,
So, my
just a
God.
urine-soaked Star Wars. That's all it is. I do want to shout out my wife Mackenzie. I know she came in and said hi a few minutes ago, but the Luke and Mara Jade thing was definitely her idea. I wanted to make sure I
Nice.
put that in there because she was she actually she likes the sequels quite a bit. She's seen everything top to bottom, and we go back and rewatch them all the time, and all the movies, shows, everything, and she really wants the sequels to work because as a true fan, she's not like a dive in and nitpick and pick every little detail apart. She likes to see just beautiful shows, and
Same.
so right. And if you watch, you watch The Last Jedi. I mean, visually, it's beautiful. The things they did on their sandy fake Hoth planet, where they all the red dust coming up as the vehicles are driving through, and I mean, just some of the cinematography of the big fights on the opening scene. I mean, when you get the sun crawling up over the the giant ship and it's like all coming into view. I mean, just it looked so good, and then they just the worst script I've ever seen in my
Just
life. But
writing and story wise, yeah.
that's all it was because I mean there was a there the filmography was just so amazing, and it just looked just it was a visual masterpiece with they put so much sparkle on just a giant turd, and it was just you know I want it to I want them to try to do what they can to save it, and so I think she's in the same boat, so I really hope that they step it up and do some of these. If I'll DM Iger later and let him know. But
Please do.
yeah, if we could get these rolling, that'd be great.
100%, man. Well, that does it. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Find us again at Why So Sidious Pod, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. If you heard us talk about a Lord of the Rings episode coming out, we're dealing with technical difficulties. Thank you, Riverside, for this because the audio came in just fine for YouTube, but somehow it didn't cross over, and we don't have the WAV format to put this on Spotify. So we're trying to work on that. If you want to hear a lot of Lord of the Rings, what it is talking about all the best things about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, all of our favorite stuff about that trilogy. 2-hour episode, so we're pretty bummed that it can't go out on the podcast yet. We are trying to deal with it, but yeah, you can go to YouTube and check that one out. Might end up as a YouTube exclusive, so you better subscribe. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Let us know what you think about Star Wars now. What you would like to see in the future of Star Wars. There's a comment or a message link in the description of our podcast, whether it's on Spotify or Apple, wherever it is. You can contact us. Let us know what you think, and we can bring that up in an episode and talk about it. All right, thanks again, and we will see you next time on Why So Sidious, a nerd podcast.
Bye, everybody.
Hell yeah. Good shit, man. That was awesome. Can you hear me? Are you frozen?
Hell yeah. Yeah, I just had to get these sweaty earphones off my ear. I got you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, dude. Appreciate it.
Dude, of course. That was a hell of fun.
Yeah.
I knew that you were either going to have Thrawn or Bane, so I was like, all right, well, I'll start with Bane because obviously it makes the most sense, and so I knew I was going to steal that one. Or no, I'm sorry, you started with Bane, so I was like, I'll start with something different to see if he puts Bane out there. But yeah, dude, I just I want them to fix it. I
I
just want them to
know.
fix it. I'm so mad.
There's nothing
Just
better than Star Wars on the big screen. There's nothing better, but
there
not anymore.
really isn't. Like, dude, I watch Rogue One once a month. and I'll